Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to just be continuing to let people in to the webinar as they join. Before we get started in the actual demonstration of Iris, I'm going to do a quick round of introductions so we know who's on the call and who will be speaking today. And again, thank you for joining our Aruba Iris webinar. We'll be doing monthly things, different webinars on different solutions or products that we have available to you all, just so we can connect with you better and then obviously help you in your partnership with us. My name is Ashley Koenig. I am the ICAM for Minnesota. We also have Laura Hernandez on the call. She's the ICAM for Iowa and Missouri. Collins Turner is on the call. He handles our e-commerce side of the business. And then doing the bulk of our presentation today is going to be our Aruba systems engineer, Brian Zateski, and he'll be walking through Iris. He's a great source of knowledge and will be able to show us things of Iris that I probably don't even know yet. I'm going to share my screen so you can see some info. Oops. How are we looking? Can everyone see this?
Yeah, we got your screen up.
Okay, great. So before we dive into the actual demonstration, I want to touch on some key benefits of Iris and just let you know why this would be a good tool. A lot of our partners have already seen this, so if you have, this will just be a good refresher. If you are brand new to Iris, this is great, and we're definitely happy that you're able to join. Iris is a great tool to see a lot of things in one place. You'll have access to the SKUs, the list pricing. There will be a lot of information around actual like hardware and software. You'll see the data sheets in there. You'll have access to the warranty information, the support information. You can build custom configs, and when you're doing that, you'll be able to choose what additional products that are needed as far as accessories, the cabling, the mounting. This way you're not having to go search a whole bunch of different sites. You can look at one place and see what's there. And then there's other products you can add, like professional services to help with installment. There's different supporting options. All of that will be loaded into Iris in one place. When you are building your config or after you're done, you can then export that into an Excel file, send it to your ICAM. We can look over it, and Brian's going to walk through how we can export the BOM into an Excel file. That way we all know how to do that, but that will help us get you quotes faster. We also generally will take a BOM and go over it with our engineers, and this will help them be able to quickly verify that everything's looking good. Or if we have questions, we can go back to you and say, hey, we're missing support or accessories here. Where are we wanting to go with this? So this is a one kind of stop place that you can do everything to get your BOMs where you need to be. It also will allow you to see what products are going end of sale or end of life and give you recommendations for other products, which can be very helpful when we are in a world of constant change and new products coming out, old products are coming, new products coming out, and the old products being gone. Everything will be right here. And you can also do comparisons. So a lot of times our engineers are great and they will send us fact sheets and data sheets on the hardware that we're looking at. You can also find it within Iris. So if you're trying to compare two models, it will be right there for you. And as Brian goes through the actual demonstration, he, like I said, is full of knowledge and will probably highlight some of these benefits or add to the list and show you why it is really so beneficial. We will be going through how to export the Iris BOM. That's something that Brian will do as he goes through the actual demonstration. And with that, Brian, I'm going to let you take over and actually walk us through and take us through Iris itself.
Absolutely. No, appreciate it, Ashley. Just want to confirm you can hear me okay, and I'll share my screen in just a second here.
Yes, totally can.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. And if you don't mind, just confirming that you can see my screen okay.
Looks great.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, definitely appreciate everybody taking the time to join this morning for the Iris demo today. The demo portion probably in the ballpark of 20 to 30 minutes, somewhere in the middle of that. Um, and we'll call this an introduction to Iris type of demo. There are some additional videos on the Intangi site that can be referenced as well. I do want to note we're going to have everyone on mute during this call, so if you have questions, I'd suggest, and Collins, you can chime in on this, but suggest putting them in the chat box, and Collins can either interrupt me or we can address it at the end of the demo. I also want to do a little shout out. I did see a few names that I recognize in terms of external attendees joining that we've worked together in the past. So hello to those of you that I have worked with in the past. So getting started in regards to understanding Iris and kind of from a square one standpoint, right now I've already launched the application. The first thing to understand is Iris is it's not an HPE Aruba tool. It's developed by a company called Intangi, but it is something that every single Aruba SE in the company uses. I use it on a daily, if not hourly basis. It's incredibly common, incredibly helpful from a pre-sales kind of solution architect standpoint, but a number of other folks wearing different hats use this platform as well. Um, the first time that you're using the platform, if you haven't used it already, it is going to do a little bit of a larger update when you're downloading the initial price list and doing all those updates. So that might take a few minutes. After that, every time you launch the application, it will do a check for updates, and usually it's about once or twice a week that an update does occur. That is going to appear in the new and updated folder here. Um, and those updates usually only take about 5 to 10, maybe 15 seconds at most. So just noting that. So that first update's big. After that, weekly updates, and smaller time frame in the sense of how long it takes to make that update or change. Now, for the sake of this demo, we're going to focus just on the folders that are going to be most relevant. So new and updated, I'm going to touch on that. And Aruba, pretty much everything else on here, we're going to stick away from either because we don't touch it or because it's a competitor. um, Referencing new and updated, just talking about this a little further, everything listed here is also shown in the Aruba folder. But you're going to see, and the text is a little hard to read, but it's yellow on yellow. So you're going to see either UPD or new. So UPD standing for updated, meaning that was an existing product and something's been changed to it. Maybe a new SKU was added, maybe a description was modified, whatever the case is. And then new means it was a new product, MPI, new product introduction, new product release. So like these couple of APs are brand new to the portfolio, so they've just been added in. So did want to note that. So jumping into things, I'm going to dive into the Aruba folder, and there's definitely one the most content around Aruba in terms of this platform. Like if we look at promotions, which is irrelevant, pre-release is not important this time. You're going to see point next, limited options, rack and power, storage, right? Not something that we touch, but you're going to see Aruba in comparison. This is the meat and potatoes of the platform in the sense of how we use it. Most folders in here are relevant, but there are certain ones that I'm going to say you're probably not going to touch on a very often basis. In the example, like private cellular, we have or had a partnership with Solona. Likely this is going to be modified given that we've recently acquired Athonet as a new 5G private cellular solution offering, which has yet to be incorporated into our product line. But most of what I would say are traditionally focused on is going to be switching, access points. You're going to notice enterprise is segmented. So this is enterprise switching, enterprise wireless. Instant On has its own folder, and then the subfolders of Instant On APs and switches. So that's our SMB solution offering. If you're not already familiar, gateways and controllers, network management. That's primarily going to be central moving forward. User experience and analytics. So this is the UXI sensors. Location services is going to be very few and far between. That's the Meridian, BLE, wayfinding, blue dot locationing. Typically only for large public venues as the primary target customer there. Security, that's where you're going to find our NAC solution offering ClearPass. So that's going to be your main focus here, even though there are some additional subfolders kind of going forward. So in the sense of understanding the platform, let's kind of build something out, and I'll walk through some of the steps as we're doing that. and then I'll call out, additional kind of points of information, tips and tricks along the way. Um, we're certainly gonna, go through a good bit of content here, but certainly not every button that's in the platform. So, my suggestion is if you don't already have access, get yourself access and play around with it. The more you're in it, the faster you're gonna be able to kind of navigate, and also the more familiar you're gonna be with all the additional tools and options that are available. So in terms of switching, I'm going to definitely call out CX is, the next gen kind of current switching platform of the company, and the future of the company. So generally speaking, aside from legacy deployments for AOSS, that's where you're going to want to stick for switching. Flex Network, Flex Fabric is very, very few and far between. That's the legacy. I don't necessarily want to say legacy, but it's our Commodore OS switching platform, which is an acquisition by HPE. Definitely not a focus of ours moving forward. So we certainly want to focus on CX. So in the navigational pane here, I'm under Aruba switching and then CX, and then in here we can see all the different model series. If I double click a model series, what ends up happening is it populates an item into this site view. Now, it typically will populate like the most common SKU. So this is a 48 port PoE option. But if you look down here in the kind of bottom left corner of my screen, you can see there are a number of different variations available. And this is a series, so 6300 series. So there is a 6300M as well as a 6300F. If you're not familiar with the difference there, F stands for fixed port or fixed, and then M stands for modular. So certainly want to note that. So I want to stick with the modular switch here for the sake of the demo because it's going to give us some additional configuration options to go through. But I also want to show you there's a cool tool called the viewer. So if I switch from a 48 port down to a 24 port, you can see that kind of get modified. If I go down to like a 6300F, you're going to see the back doesn't have those slots, right? So it's not modular. So certainly wanted to just emphasize that point. And this is going to be relevant here. I'm going to toggle back and forth a little bit when we get to fan and power. Now, I want to point out at the bottom of the screen here, I just highlighted it. You can see current P reserve is 370 watts. That's based on the power supply that's pre-selected right now. The power supply for the 6300M is a separate line item. So if you just bought the Switch and you didn't buy the power supply, it will not ship with one in the box. You do need to order it as a separate line item. So going forward here, we're going to jump over to fan and power. You're going to notice here that there's a note, right? It's in all caps. It includes one fan tray for this specific SKU. So you do have to pay attention to that because this note does vary from one SKU to another SKU based on the switch. So we can add a redundant fan tray. And then if we go down here to power supply options, you're going to see, it's choosing that kind of default option, a 680 watt power supply. And this is where the tool becomes helpful is in slot 2, you're going to notice all the other power supply options are actually grayed out. So it's Iris kind of stopping any mistakes from happening, right? You can't mix and match power supplies of different wattages in this switch. And I also want to point out, right, if I put in that second power supply, it does update the P reserve down here. Now, typically speaking, the intention of a second power supply would be for failover or redundancy purposes. So I wouldn't want to count that additional P reserve unless you're intending on running as an active. So I can click this checkbox and it'll go back to kind of just as if you're using a singular power supply, but we're quoting the second one. So just to show you what the quotation looks like right now, there's this button up here right under tools and window. It looks like a dollar sign. You can click the button which with a left click, or you can do, you see the hotkey there, the control plus Q. So if I click that, what I really want to point out is we're seeing one of the switch. We're seeing an auto-populated support option on here, and this is typically the same across the board for the majority of products. It's gonna be a 1-year foundation care next business day exchange. So that's pretty typical. It's not the exact same one on everything, but you're gonna see this for APs, switches, gateways, even licensing is gonna have a support SKU auto-populated. But again, it does vary a little bit from one type of product to another. But what I really want to point out is some clarification on power supply and fan tray, because I have seen a number of, mistakes made on this, and we want to make sure it's caught. So you can see here we have one switch, two power supplies. So kind of reinforcing that statement of if you don't buy the power supply, you're not getting one in the box. Versus the fan tray, we click the option for redundant fan tray. So that's why this is only listed as one, because if we go back to that note here, one is already included. So it's one of those things. Yeah, I want both power redundancy and redundant fan trays. Why is the power supply a different quantity than the fan trays? And it's because one's included. So definitely wanted to highlight that and emphasize that note. Now we're going to get into a little bit more kind of concept that applies not only to switching but to other products as well. We're going to go into the attributes tab. So in here, we can specify a quantity multiplier. So this is where you're saying, hey, I'm getting 2 switches, or it could be 20 switches, whatever the case is, right? So I'm saying 2 for the quantity multiplier. If you see here that quantity adjusted, so x2, and then if I hit the quotation option, everything is in multiples of 2, right? Power supply is now 4. So there's mostly pros to this, but one slight con, and I do want to call this out. So everything, every tab is multiplied by that attribute or quantity multiplier, except for the accessories tab, which is a good thing. The negative of that is that there are certain items that you may want an odd number for, and there's not an easy way to do that. I'll explain that in a little further detail in just a moment. But I want to show you this. If we go into the accessories tab, say we had 2 of these switches. Typically speaking, we'd want to get a couple DAC cables to stack them together and have redundant links. In this case, intentionally, I'm going to leave this as quantity 1, and I said no to that little prompt that came up for syncing it to the quantity multiplier. So we're seeing one cable here, one DAC cable for stacking purposes, and we're going to see that quotation view again. You're going to see this is listed as 1, right? So it's not being multiplied out by quantity 2. Versus if I go into my uplink ports, the SAP56 ports, you're going to see here, right, a number of different transceiver options that are available. If I click on a transceiver and then hit that quotation button again, that's 2. So even though I only selected one transceiver on one port, it's applying it twice to both switches because we did use that quantity multiplier. So just be aware of that. So oftentimes what I'll do is if there's a scenario and we're working with a customer and they know that they need 7 transceivers for whatever the use case is, and it's an odd number but I built out the whole thing using an even denominator. You're going to go ahead and export this to Excel and then manually change the quantity field in Excel. So that's the easiest workaround in terms of making sure that everything lines up and the quantity multiplier isn't impacting things the way you don't want it to. So jumping past that, we're going to dive into access points. So in here, you're going to see a number of different options, right? So indoor, you can see the desktop wall plate. Outdoor, client bridges is actually gone. So if we go into indoor, I'm just going to choose, I'll choose a 635 for fun. So this is, tri-radio Wi-Fi 6E access point. What's really nice down here is that it actually tells you the wattage requirement of the AP. Now, there are some kind of cool we'll say tricks you can use using the platform, such as a connected tool where you can connect one device to another device. You can do this for stacking, you can do this for uplinks, things of that nature. Typically, I don't, unless there's like a design where I really want to see like a topology view, just because it can become a little tedious and you do have to go through additional buttons and steps. And in most cases, the intention for the tool is to get you the final end result build material. So, that doesn't always equate to being a necessary use of time. So with that, what I want to point out and why somebody might do that is this uses 20.7 watts, right? Worst case scenario in terms of power consumption, right? So this has 370 watts available. So if I, connected this to that, it would minus out that 20.7 watts, right? That's what's going to happen. So there is a little error message, but again, in most cases, I'll just do the simple math. Hey, I'm buying 10 of these APs. I know I'm going to need 207 watts. Okay, my switch is 370 watts. I'm good to go, and I have 163 watts to spare. So it's up to you how you want to use the tool in that sense, but I did want to point out that connected tool does exist. But more importantly, I wanted to point out that when you're populating on APs, you are seeing the wattage requirements on a per model standpoint. Now, one error message I am going to get to go away because this one is very important is the mounting bracket. So mounts um, have not been included in the box since the 5XX series were released. So we used to with 3XX and older models, so 5XX and beyond. Mounting hardware is sold separately. We have 5 different options. One little challenge here is you'll notice this is a drop down. So, much of the time, a customer may not know exactly which mounting option they want. Typically speaking, I'll use the solid surface as like a default, we'll call it placeholder option, and then make a modification later as needed, um, because it's not a one size fits all. But it's a little challenging in the sense that this is a drop down, so it's very hard. If somebody says, "Hey, give me an option for all of them," right? Because you're going to have to do it 5 different times, which isn't the best use of time. So in most cases, again, I'll suggest that placeholder, provide either a like ordering guide, or we have a AP unified accessories PDF that'll give descriptions on all the mounts available, and then just say, hey, let us know which mount you want. But in this case, right, I'm going to choose the solid surface mount. You're going to see that error message goes away. And I'm going to leave this for quantity one just for a moment. So I'm going to hit that quotation option again. So we see our AP, we see the auto generated support option, we see the mount on here. And I want to call out, there is a list price is showing for everything. I want to call out the list price on that mount. So it's $37 list, right? So if we go in here and we go into attributes and we change that quantity multiplier to 10, right? So now it's x10, right? So there's 10 of these APs, and I hit that quotation option. You're going to see 10 for the AP, 10 for the support SKU, and then 1 for the mount. And it actually changed the part number. So this is a 10 pack. So the tool is smart enough to recognize, oh, it's 10 or more mounts. I'm going to, adjust this to be more, cost effective. So the cost of a 10 pack is $303 versus a cost of a single pack in the sense of the APM and TD, the solid surface mount, is $37. So it just saved you $67 automatically by going to the 10 pack. So that is something that the tool will do. Now be aware that feature only exists on indoor APs. I don't believe we have 10 packs available on our outdoor APs. So just noting that there are some other, nuanced items like snap-on covers. There's 20 packs of those available and things of that nature. But generally speaking, you're going to see this primarily applicable for enterprise indoor APs when you're doing the 10 packs amounts. Now, the next item that I would throw on here for, we'll say, a pretty traditional build is going to be Aruba Central Cloud. And I just want to point out too, so I'm in the network management tab. There's a lot of options in here. Most of these you likely will not touch. IMC, I can't even remember the last time I talked about it legitimately. That's a legacy HPE platform. It's really gone by the wayside. I don't think a demo has been available for it for 2+ years. So realistically speaking, we're not talking or touching on IMC. Airwave does come up from time to time. I've been around for about 9 years with Aruba, as 9 years as of next month. So Airwave used to be very popular. Currently, it's in a state of maintenance, meaning that the product's still supported, it's still being sold for certain customers that require it, but there is no new feature development. And as you can imagine, Central is the future of the company. And then Aruba Central on-prem. So Central on-prem is really only geared towards large scale enterprise and some migrations of Airwave to Central on-prem for customers that either don't want or can't go to the cloud. But it's incredibly expensive. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars for a starting price point. So 99% of the time, again, depending on the type of customer, you're just going to go network management, Aruba Central Cloud, and keep it really simple. So I'm going to populate that in here. And if we scroll down, you're going to see, Central Cloud as the default selected option. Don't worry about any of the items that say on-prem. FedRAMP is we'll say specific to Gov or Gov adjacent. So really just want to focus on Central Cloud, which is going to be the default selection. License type. So I want to pull up something really quick. There are 2 different tiers of licenses, Foundation and Advanced, and this is specific to AP, so we do have this for other devices as well. I just took this little snip, and this is, not saying this is the most current, but this is posted, publicly online. What I typically like to say is for the vast majority of customers, Foundation is more than adequate, right? That all these features are included. Advanced offers some additional enhancements on top of what Foundation already gives you. But again, for the vast majority of our customer base, Foundation, will fit the bill. So that's why it's the default selected option. But just wanted to show you we do have documentation out there in case you're, trying to figure out, hey, which one should I be positioning? So if you scroll down here, the big thing that you're probably going to adjust next, or first even, is term. I typically find the 3-year to be the most common. So adjusting that drop down there. Now, if we scroll down, you got a couple different options here. You can use the auto checkbox, so it's going to auto populate quantities for you. So if I hit that, you can see it just said, "Hey, 10 APs, hey, 2 of this switch model series." And this is different, if you're familiar with Aruba from the past. We used to have some different licensing schemes. So now all the APs use the same licensing. Switches are based on model series, with some caveats around port count, but generally speaking, model series. So with that, you can see 10 APs, 2 of the 63XX switches are listed on here. Now, one kind of word of caution I'll put on is oftentimes I'll use this as a way to show a customer a option A versus option B. So what if I wanted to quote, option A being the 635 and option B being the 535, and I wanted to put them side by side, right? So if I did that, the challenge would be this would count it to 20 if I had 10 of the one and 10 of the other. So if I want to show both options, but I don't want it to count both of them, right, to keep my count to 10 and showing, this AP is option one, the other AP is option two, I can uncheck that and manually modify these fields. Additionally, there's some other options, some ways to approach that. You can go ahead and create an additional site, and you can apply licensing just to a specific site rather than across all sites. So that's another option that's available to you. But just did want to know, there's a couple different ways to approach that scenario. Now from here, we're kind of, we'll say, done with our build. But right now, in my opinion, it's a little hard to read. It's a little, kind of squished together, if you will, right? There's a lot of parts. When does one stop? When does the next one start? And this is a really simple build, right? We got a couple switches, some components for the switches, some APs, indoor APs, and some central licensing, and that's it, right? We don't have data center, we don't have top of rack, we don't have aggregation versus access, we don't have indoor APs, outdoor APs, wall mount APs. I mean, this could be 50 line items long very easily, right? And this is just with about 12 or so, and it's kind of again just a little difficult to read as you start adding more and more items in. So what I like to do, and you have a couple different ways to do this, is a feature, if you will, called design groups. So you can highlight multiple options and put them in a design group. So say you're presenting it as like an option A and option B. I could have these three things in option A, and then another subset of items in option B. But I'll typically do more often is I'll do like a site one and site two as an option A, option B, and I'll individually place devices into their own design group. So here I could say, switching for APs, I'll say, WLAN, and for central, I'll just say, cloud. Now I'm going to intentionally show this. So this is incorrect, but intentionally showing just to make sure that you're aware. If you do that, it's not going to change anything. So there's additional steps you have to take. So from here, we're going to go to tools, quotation options, group by design group, and then we're going to hit show subtotal, and then we're going to hit OK. So once we made that change take effect, we're going to hit that quotation button again. And now you're going to see everything.
Oh, Brian, are you still
Oh, yep.
talking?
Sorry about that. Yeah,
Okay,
my
thank you.
my headset got a little loose. So hopefully you can hear me. So yeah. So what I wanted to say was, at this point, you can see how everything was broken out from a design group standpoint. So we can see cloud has its own group, switching has its own group, WLAN has its own group, and because we did the checkbox for show subtotal, we can see the subtotal cost. So if you're presenting cloud as an option, right, not a requirement, here's the additional cost to add on cloud licensing, right? So that's a pretty important takeaway. Now, from this viewpoint, we can export this to Excel. So this button here has a little arrow with the folder there, export to Excel. Um, and just show it that it looks like. So let's say test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to pop up. So if you see here, right, cloud, switching, WLAN, they all get highlighted in this kind of pale yellow color. And then what's extra nice about doing the subtotal, and again, another reason why I encourage it, is it gives you an extra row of spacing, right? So it's not like line item, and then switching line item, line item. It gives the extra space just to make it, again, a little bit more readable. So this is what the Excel file looks like. This is typically what, like Ashley would ask for, in terms of, hey, send me a copy of the build, right? This is something that we would want to see. But that's how you export to Excel. So just to kind of re-show that right up here, export to Excel. So it's this button in the quotation view. Now there are some additional options here. You can see show all formats. So there's a lot of different options in here. A popular one is going to be block diagram because you can export as a Microsoft Visio file. So that's a good one. And then another big note on here is we talked about exporting, but not about saving the file and coming back, right? What if you had additional work to accomplish? So we can do a save as and save it as a .isf file or iris system file. So imagine we had a large project and it took us, a couple hours to put together, and there's a ton of parts and pieces, and presented to a customer, and they're like, "This looks great. I'd like to move forward, but can you make this one change and change those 635s down to 515s?" And you can say, absolutely, right? So if you did not take the time to save an iris file, you'd have to build this from scratch again, because nothing was saved. Versus if you have it saved as an iris file, you can reopen it and keep all of your existing work and then modify that one item, right? So think of this as like a save state of your current work. And it's also very collaborative. Like if you're working with an Aruba SE, such as myself, you could send me the iris file and say, hey, how does this look? Any changes you want to make? Or if you're working with this internally with a colleague, right? Maybe you're out of office for a week and they're going to be covering your accounts while you're gone. You can send them your iris files just in case any customers call in and make modifications or any changes that need to happen. So .isf file, that's under the file save as. Now, the last important note that I'm going to make on here that we haven't touched on yet is the support services. So if I go in here, I'm going to expand this out just so you can see a little better. You're going to see those default kind of pre-selected options. I want to show you this too. So 3-year, again, more typical, traditional. So take a look at the cost of these, and the reason I'm pointing this out, this is a note that Iris does not understand and recognize, and it depends on how you're positioning to a customer. But these are very typical, right? This is your next business day hardware replacement and 24/7 software support. Now, it's important to note any device that's pointed to Central automatically gets 24/7 software support. So instead of buying these more expensive licenses, what we recommend doing is bumping that down to the hardware support only, and you can see the price drop down substantially, right? So just kind of clicking over so you can see it here and here, and then moving it left again here and here, you can see it drop down, a quarter of the cost, if that, right? Substantially less expensive because it's only covering the hardware, and that's because you're already getting support by purchasing that central licensing. So we don't need you to double dip on that. So that's a very important note. And then if I scroll left here, there are some clickable PDFs kind of throughout this page as well. So you can open this and it'll take you to the actual, public facing Aruba warranty support page. But everything in this kind of blue green area is telling you what's included with the product. So like switches have limited lifetime and limited life warranty and limited lifetime business hours tech support, but only 90 days of 24/7 versus APs only have 90 days of business hours tech support and none for 24/7. And that's out of the box, right? If you didn't buy anything extra. So very important to note, it does vary from switch to AP to gateway and other devices as well. So certainly wanted to note that. And then just a couple other kind of final tidbits, and I'll turn it back over to Ashley and Laura and Collins. If we right click on a device, did want to show where some of the product information is. So you can go to documentation. This is where you can pull up your data sheets. This is also where you can do like a comparison. And then I know there's a mention of like the end of sale. So if I go into like the AOSS line, you can see this device. It's listed pre-end of sale. You can kind of ignore that if you hover over it. It actually is already end of sale. If we click on that, you're going to see, hey, here's the legacy SKU. Here's the recommended replacement SKU. So that does pop up for you. So a lot of nice tools and features within the platform that are built in. This is updated by PLM. And it's typically owned by, like we have a PLM for wireless versus we have PLM for these CX switches versus those CX switches. So it's not just a singular person that's providing these updates. And these updates come from PLM to the Intangi Iris team, and they provide the updates into the software. So I'll kind of stop sharing here and turn it over to Ashley, Laura, and Collins. And I think there was probably one other slide, and if there's any other items that we want to address from a chat or Q&A standpoint, we can do that as well.
Yes, thanks, Brian, so much for that. So as Brian mentioned, we just want to cover one other thing. So getting access to Iris is made easy for you. So you just have to send an email to your respective CAM. So either me, Ashley, or Collins with your request for access. Access is granted based on company domain. So once we submit your request and it's approved, any user with the email domain will be able to download and access the tool. So if there are 2 or more of you for the same company on the call today, if you're comfortable to discuss it between you, I would suggest having one of you reach out and potentially CCing your teammates on your request. You may also have someone in your company that manages your relationship with Aruba that may be able to help with this. So as an example, I see Graybar, who I cover. You all have Steve Lieberman managing your company's relationship. So you could potentially reach out to him to request access on your behalf. So others on the call may have that option as well. You can discuss it with your respective CAM if needed. An approval email will then be sent back from your CAM with detailed instructions for downloading and additional information around video training, which Brian had mentioned at the beginning of the demo, a comprehensive user guide, Aruba pricing instructions, and even Iris Support Center. So another note here that it says is Mac OS requires Microsoft Windows emulator, so just keep that in mind as well. So I think that covers the gaining access to Iris. It's pretty simple. Now we would like to open up the floor for any questions or comments around the presentation today. So please send a note in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand, and we'll get you off of mute to address your question if there are any.
Yeah, and Laura, I actually just allowed mic for everybody. So if anyone has any questions, yeah, chime in. We're happy to answer them. And anything around Iris or who your CAM is or anything along those lines. So. And
Well,
also, if you don't have any questions currently, feel free, send a message to myself, Ashley, Laura after the call, and we're happy to answer them that way too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if there are no questions, we just want to thank you all again for taking the time out of your day to join the webinar today. We hope this was a great use of your time and that you learned something new. We did record the call today, so recording for you to replay or to pass along to any of your team members that couldn't make it today or were not on the call. So Collins, Ashley, if there's anything else.
Yeah, again, as you're kind of walking through Iris, once you get access for yourself, just keep in mind there is a lot of information we went over today, so that recording will definitely help. If you have any questions on how to use certain features, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we're happy to walk through those features again. Iris isn't a one-time use and you're an expert, but once you start using that and getting in that tool, it's a lifesaver. So really great. I use it every single day for builds with our customers and partners. So again, if you need anything at all, reach out to any of us. We're happy to help. And then be on the lookout. We're going to be doing different webinars for the next few months or so, probably about once a month, and we'll be doing it around specific product, around things like Central, going over demos, things along those lines. So we'll be in touch for all those upcoming webinars as well.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you again,
Thank you,
Brian. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And thank you again to everyone else for your time today. We'll give you back 5 minutes of your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks
great.
everyone.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Take care.